Soul arrived at a heavily guarded location via his flying sword. He landed in front of the entrance gate, much to the guard's surprise. He respectfully stated his name and asked for the young master of the house, Sui. It didn't take long for the young man to run up to him excitedly. He inquired about what had happened to the fragrance tracer feline they had collaborated to catch. Seeing signs of awkward defeat on the young man's face, he asked again. They were already aware that the consequence of failing to tame it would be its death, and that's exactly what occurred. Lady Su must be heartbroken, but they had more urgent matters to discuss. Since Wan Wan's mother had passed away, Soul deemed it prudent not to reveal Wan Wan's existence. As they made their way inside the household, they continued their urgent discussion. Rather than having something to discuss, Sui had something to offer. This piqued Soul's attention ever so slightly. It seemed to concern something called a concentrated spirit land. It was a place where strong fiends roamed and rare sacred herbs grew. Among the 9 sites of concentrated spirit land in Yeongjo, the Choksan family managed one of them called the Lone Spirit Land. It was being jointly managed by some influential families in the area. Currently, these families were recruiting skilled alchemists in preparation for its once-in-a-decade opening. They would require someone with formidable Dharma tools and superior skills compared to normal alchemists. From Sui's perspective, Soul fit this description, so he wanted to extend an invitation. They were now in the Paulownia prefecture of Yeongjo, in the clear postal county where the Lone Spirit Land was located. Powerful alchemists from all around the area had gathered outside the site's entrance. There were righteous alchemists, mischievous ones, a serious bunch, and various other factions. Soul already knew that the materials he was seeking would overlap with what these people were looking for. Now that everyone was gathered, a man appeared above the crowd. The man reiterated the rules and the 1-month deadline before the exit would be blocked. Anyone who remained inside after the deadline wouldn't be able to leave until the land was opened again. Furthermore, all sacred herbs and fiend corpses would be confiscated from that person. The competition inside would be tough, with 180 alchemists vying for resources. Upon entry, everyone would be scattered, and a powerful fiend would emerge from the center. Finally, the man unlocked the seal of the Lone Spirit Land. Alchemists sped inside on their respective Dharma motion tools. The race for sacred herbs and fiend corpses had begun. The entrance led him to a mountainous region. Soul confirmed that everyone had been scattered as he formulated a plan. His trump card for this venture would undoubtedly be the adorable Wan Wan. He instructed the kitten to memorize the fragrance of sacred herbs in exchange for winter coconuts. They continued flying until they arrived at marshland. Observing Wan Wan's reactions, it seemed a precious sacred herb was nearby. He landed on the damp ground and sensed a higher intensity of spirit energy. Back in the forest of beasts, he hadn't paid attention to herbs he didn't need, but now he could collect everything. He traversed the muddy waters in search of treasures. He needed sagebrush and sorghum for the later stages of heavenly birth. Swamps like this one should have them. However, as he walked, both he and Wan Wan felt a disturbance. A colony of fiend wasps was clearly in attack mode from a distance. An alchemist had the misfortune of encountering them right away. He opened a magical gourd, and a cascade of flame engulfed the wasps. Since this place was so rich in spiritual energy, fiends were harder to sense. Not far from the commotion, Soul also noticed something eye-catching. It was what he was looking for, a sagebrush. He contemplated whether to take advantage of the situation and go for the plant. In this land, sacred herbs were ownerless until someone held them after all. As he wrestled with his morals, another voice entered the scene. Soul and the man fighting the wasps turned their attention. A man swooped in to grab the sagebrush for himself, believing it was a matter of skill, but the man with the gourd only laughed at the fool. When the opportunist realized what was happening, it was too late. A massive fiend lurked beneath the muddy waters. Using the sacred herb as bait, Bro fell for the oldest trick in the monster book. A bloody and gory mess sprayed across the waters. The opportunist managed to gain some distance with an awkward retreat, but one of his arms was now the fiend's meal. Soul identified this monstrosity as a high-level fiend, a swamp golem. It seemed it had been waiting for an alchemist to enter this area. It was a formidable beast in its natural habitat. The one-armed man could only shiver in fear. Frozen in place, the golem had a feast. The man fighting the wasps initially sensed that something was off, but he didn't anticipate a high-level fiend's appearance. He had come to investigate and retreated after realizing he was out of his depth. However, for Soul, it was a different story. This golem might be formidable, but he knew its weak points. With a confident smile, he was ready to take on this opponent. With everyone either retreating or dead, the fiend turned its attention to him. This golem literally looks like mud-covered Thanos. It traversed the muddy waters and charged at him recklessly. He stood with his dual swords, thinking this was worth a shot. He began the combat with the flawless execution of a dodge using flash steps. He knew that if the golem left the swamp, its speed would drastically decrease. Furthermore, its movements were extremely simple. He launched an offensive with the first maneuver of Destruction's sword arts. One sword flew from his hands at breakneck speeds with the activation of the Flying Swallow energy strike. It cleanly went through the fiend's mouth, severely wounding it. He easily eliminated a high-level fiend. That's a one-shot, one-kill. He took the sagebrush growing from the head of the golem's lifeless body. Taking the golem's leather would consume too much time, and he wanted to avoid staying in one place for too long. As soon as he harvested the sacred herb, Wan almost made a meal of it. He had to grab the rowdy kitten to calm it down and prevent it from eating his loot. It seemed that instead of helping him track herbs, Wan was just trying to eat everything. If that was the case, then it might be time for the kitty to go inside the defense pouch. Observing how this tiny cat behaved, he started to miss the kind and obedient Jade Ravine boar. Rest in peace, Piggy. 10 days had passed since the 180 alchemists had entered the concentrated spirit land. While cruising through the air, Soul spotted a winter coconut tree. He thought that Wan was probably hungry, so this came at the right time. During his time here, he had gathered a lot of sacred herbs. Perhaps it was time to gather some for Wan's power-up. However, that casual and joyful attitude was about to be interrupted by a sinister feeling. Just then, he felt someone's spiritual energy scanning him, an ability that only Law of Spirit Energy alchemists possessed. The only thing on his mind now was to immediately get out of there as fast as he could. He jumped onto his flying sword and pushed it to its limits, but someone behind him was chasing fast. The bearded alchemist ordered him to stop during his desperate escape. He turned around to see a familiar person who was already on top of him. He had seen this guy at the entrance. He was one of the Law of Spirit Energy alchemists on the roster. It was quite obvious that this bearded individual had no good intentions. He had to halt his escape and respectfully introduced himself as Woon Soul, a guest from the Chokson family, and asked if the man had any business with him. Since this was the man's first time seeing Soul here, he asked him if he was a wanderer without a sect. Soul asked the bearded alchemist if his being a wanderer posed a problem. The bearded man amusingly stated that it did pose a problem, even a significant one, because the 6 families kept bringing wanderers to this land. The harvest he had been diligently gathering for a decade was continually being depleted, and so he wondered what would happen if the number of wanderers decreased just a little bit. This had been the man's goal from the start. If that was the case, Soul would face him with full force, utilizing every Dharma tool in his arsenal to their full power. The bearded man was amused by Soul's ability to handle so many tools at once. However, at the end of the day, Soul was still just a heavenly birth alchemist. The bearded man could easily and casually release a simple energy strike that Soul would struggle to defend against. Yet even with his shoddy defense, Soul managed to hold on and even succeeded in sneaking a blade in for a counterattack. But even after that, the bearded man just laughed at his efforts. A thick translucent barrier surrounded the man, defending him from every angle. The bearded man praised Soul's skills for a heavenly birth newbie, but he explained that tricks wouldn't work against a spirit energy barrier. That was when Soul threw down a sneaky brown smoke bomb. However, even that explosive was ineffective against the barrier. He still didn't know the limits of this barrier's defensive capabilities, and his smoke screen was also going to dissipate soon. The bearded man insulted him for even considering using such shoddy smoke bombs. Soul was too strong for an alchemist of his level, and the bearded man knew that talented individuals like him held grudges deeply. He brought out a cane Dharma tool, as he could only rest easy if he killed Soul. The bearded alchemist swung the cane wildly in all directions, hoping to hit him. This was what Soul had been waiting for. With the barrier down, he could approach with his blade. He initiated the 6th maneuver of Destruction's sword arts as the blade lunged forward. The bearded man activated the barrier just in the nick of time, reiterating that any tricks would be useless. However, the concentration in Soul's eyes remained unwavering. He wasn't done yet. The blade began to emanate light and crack into pieces. It was the 10,000 explosion sword arts. The sharp shards of the sword continued their offense as if they had a life of their own. After they covered every angle of the barrier, a fiery explosion capped off the attack. It was a pity that he had to sacrifice the entreaty's sword, but this was his strongest attack as of now, and he needed to use this time to escape swiftly. The bearded alchemist was furious that he had been outplayed by a young wanderer. He would never forgive Soul, and vowed to erase him without a trace. With unprecedented speed, the bearded man closed in on Seoul with unbridled bloodlust. However, the king swing to end it all was seemingly interrupted. Even Seoul did not know what had happened as he slowly opened his eyes. It was a white-haired senior calling the bearded man a criminal for going around and harassing juniors. The bearded man went into panic mode as he recognized this man as Hwang Oh-duin. This senior shouldn't even be here, or more accurately, he shouldn't still be here. Seeing senior Hwang Oh-duin taking things seriously this time, the bearded alchemist had no choice but to swiftly turn his flying sword around and retreat. Meanwhile, the senior remained nonchalant about the beard's creeping fear of his presence in this land. Additionally, Hwang Oh believed that he was right where he should be. If the beard's calculations were correct, this man had been trapped in the land for 40 years. Senior Hwang Oh thought it would be better for the beard to stop harassing the juniors and leave. If he didn't leave within 3 counts, they would engage in a game of catch, a game more suited to the senior's tastes. The deep, dark green aura that the senior emitted was too powerful. That aura high-key goes hard. 40 years ago, he had only been at the middle level of the law of spirit energy. The beard knew what was best and quickly departed. The senior could only sigh in disappointment as he had actually been seeking a fight. Solo realized that this person was extremely powerful. Even though the senior had helped him, Solo remained cautious. He thanked the man respectfully and promised to repay him in the future. However, the senior dismissed the matter, considering it insignificant. But the favor Solo had mentioned, the senior wanted him to repay it immediately. Sensing that something was amiss, Solo hesitantly inquired about the senior's intentions. To be precise, Hwang Oh didn't want anything from him, but he sought help from the fragrance-tracing feline inside Solo's shirt. He asked the senior how Wan had been spotted and about his end goal. Hwang Oh simply observed him moving around with cat fur on his chest. Feeling offended by being treated like a criminal when he was seeking assistance, the man expressed his frustration. He believed that Solo should help a fellow guest from the Chaksan district. Upon hearing this, Solo asked the senior if they both came as guests of the same family. The senior confirmed and introduced himself properly to Solo. Following the senior's instructions, they proceeded. Solo asked if he had stayed here to capture a giant shadow tortoise near the lone spirit land's core. Hwang Oh appreciated the strong spirit energy in this place, which made it ideal for gathering materials to aid his training. However, there was a rule of confiscation for those exceeding the 1-month limit. The senior exploited a loophole by crafting and consuming damn pills in here instead. With their rapid speed, they reached their destination soon. From this point onward, they entered the territory of the giant shadow tortoise. Hwang Oh wanted Wan to track down the fiend's scent with enthusiasm, beginning from the mountain's peak. Seoul, knowing that giant shadow tortoises often nested in underground water veins, proposed starting there. This suggestion stopped the senior in his tracks. Hwang Oh had no idea that these tortoises remained underground. Thus, after all these years, he had not even seen their noses sticking out. As the old man grew agitated, Seoul commanded Wan to begin the search. This led them to the edge of a cliff. The feline diligently focused on its task. Wan indicated that it had found something at the very edge of the cliff. The adorable Wan is the MVP once again. Seoul believed they had discovered the tortoise hideout. Hwang Oh could never have guessed this spot due to poor visibility. Seoul activated the wind of determination to clear the cloud and fog covering the area. The senior commended him for his talent as a massive hole gradually revealed itself. Hwang Oh attributed Seoul's capability and humility to him possibly having great masters. Furthermore, the senior was convinced that they had indeed found a giant shadow tortoise. Casually, the man leaped from the high elevation to the ground below. Since Seoul had repaid his debt, he was free to act as he pleased. If he chose to follow, he would need to watch out for himself. Seoul recognized that this eccentric senior was too carefree. As they were now facing real dangers, even Wan understood the need to retreat into the defense pouch. With Wan secured, Seoul leaped off the cliff to follow the senior. At the hole's bottom, he saw Hwang Oh already armed with his battle axe. The senior instructed him to shut up, sensing that they had awakened the fiend. The cavern trembled and shook as a result. The deep hole's water began to unravel. A massive shadow emerged from the depths, finally revealing the giant shadow tortoise in a dominating stance. That tortoise looks like a Dark Souls boss. This tortoise was a formidable supreme-level fiend, and it was the first time they had encountered such a creature. The tortoise wasted no time and swiftly launched an attack. It executed a forceful stomp, which the two managed to evade easily. This was one tough beast, and the senior might have to fight earnestly. He split his battle axe into two and hurled them through the air, aiming for the tortoise's massive body. One struck its feet, and the other hit its neck, sending the fiend into a frenzied state of pain. Now bearing fresh wounds, the tortoise's only thought was retaliation. Meanwhile, Wango couldn't believe that his cherished moon hammer had only left a minor scratch on its sturdy skin. If this was the strength of a supreme-level fiend, Wango believed it was fitting to confront it with a supreme-level Dharma tool. Thus, he retrieved the black mirror orb from his pouch. This concentrated black hole should be enough to pierce through the fiend. Wango condensed the orb's energy and launched it forward. The orb traveled at astonishing speed. The giant shadow tortoise couldn't react in time to defend itself. Sewell marveled at this immense power, realizing that the earlier criminal paled in comparison. With a single strike, it looks like the invincible giant shadow tortoise was seemingly defeated. Observing this power underscored Sewell's own weakness. However, it appeared the fiend was not yet finished. The tortoise began to spin around like a Beyblade, emitting an orange light out of nowhere. It spun and spun until it reached a fearsome speed. Just as it reached its limit, the tortoise started emitting a purple fog all over the place. The entire cavern quickly filled with these fumes. Oh, hell no. That's some toxic tortoise fart right there. Seeing the fog coming at them, Wango dismissed it as mere smoke and set up a barrier. He believed that this was the tortoise's last resort to flee after being threatened, but Sewell didn't share the same belief. It didn't take long for him to be proven right. The purple smoke began to melt the senior's powerful barrier. He rotated the barrier sphere to dispel some of the smoke. Although Wango was incredibly skilled, Sewell didn't think that his wind attribute abilities would be able to keep up. If that was the case, Sewell would help him out with a bit of wind of determination. Seeing that the smoke was disrupting his powers, Wango tried to thoughtfully warn the rookie not to interfere and risk his life in vain. However, Sewell was already compressing the surrounding purple smoke in his hands. Wango couldn't believe that a mere middle-class heavenly birth alchemist could do this with a wind skill. He had already absorbed and condensed the toxic fumes to their smallest level. The tortoise stopped spinning its body, ceasing the production of the purple smoke. The majority of the substance had been condensed to the point where it could fit inside a vial. Seeing this, the proud supreme-level beast became infuriated. It opened its mouth and emitted a new batch of eroding smoke. Wango wouldn't let that attack land on the rookie, though he blocked it with a powerful barrier. He praised Sewell's efforts against the troublesome smoke, and for that, he would finish the rest. With its trump card neutralized, the fiend turned around to rely on its destructive tail. It almost made contact with Sewell, but he managed to bring out his shield just in the nick of time. However, that didn't stop him from sustaining physical damage from the fiend's formidable physique. The reduced impact alone sent him into the cavern walls. The senior went to check on him to see if he was alright. The senior's pride was affected after seeing that the tortoise saw the kid as more of a threat than he was. He reconnected the two ends of his fatal moon hammer to respond to the disrespect. It seemed like the giant shadow tortoise was ready for whatever type of attack he had in store. The senior pushed his energy to the limit as his deep and dark green aura began to emanate. In his eyes, this tortoise should have been nothing more than an insignificant monster. This is just the god of war versus Bowser. So, with a battle axe in one hand and a pickaxe in the other, he executed a lethal cross-chop. The same cavern where the intense battle had taken place now became peaceful. Sewell's wounds had been dressed, but he was still unconscious, only to be awakened by a drop of water. Above him was Senior Wango. Upon waking up, Sewell shouted in shock. He calmed himself down and assessed his situation. With the bandages and everything, it was clear that someone had taken care of him. Wango told him that this wasn't a debt. If Sewell hadn't dealt with the smoke, he would have been in trouble too. The now-beheaded giant shadow tortoise had given them quite a tough time. If this senior hadn't been with Sewell, he would have still died, so he sincerely thanked him. Wango wasn't big on sincerity and cheesiness, dismissing the idea that they were even now after helping each other out. Now that he was awake, Sewell panicked and hastily asked how much time had passed and if he had missed the 1-month deadline. He was relieved to know that he had only been out for more than 2 days. His entreaty shield and the armor inside his clothes were broken from the fight, but at least they had saved his life. The senior pointed out how bizarrely talented he was. He had the wind skill, but he was also skillful in using Dharma tools as if they were his limbs. But more than anything, his character was the strangest of all. He had actually helped out in the fight when he didn't have to. He simply reasoned that if the senior couldn't get rid of the fiend, he would be as good as dead too. Hearing Sewell speak and seeing how he acted, Wango had taken a liking to this junior of his. He might have white hair, but he exudes big bro energy. Since his wounds weren't that severe, the senior would simply give him some great dun pills for recovery. And just like that, a month had passed, and the closing day of Lone Spirit Land had come. It was apparent that the Wanderer guests were taking a long time to come back. The reason for that could either be a lack of skill or that they had been hunted down. The Su siblings were getting worried about Seoul. There were 11 Wanderers, but only 5 of them had come out. Hoping for everything to go smoothly, a familiar figure flew out of the entrance. They immediately called out to Seoul excitedly, enthused that their friend and guest had come back safely. The two greeted Seoul respectfully, and he promptly returned the gesture. Now that the 3 of them were safely assembled, they began discussing their individual harvests. Seoul thanked his luck for the bountiful harvest, while the siblings were already planning to go together next time. Not far from them, the bearded criminal alchemist noticed Seoul having a conversation with the Su siblings. He gnashed his teeth in frustration, upset that Seoul had managed to get away from him. On the ground, he also didn't miss the presence of this criminal. They looked at each other hatefully as the faction of the bearded alchemist took their leave. Seoul vowed that if they ever met again, it definitely wouldn't go like it did the last time. From his encounter with the ancient dragon Gyo-woon to the close fight against the bearded alchemist, and even the tail slap from the giant shadow tortoise, the specter of defeat has always loomed over him. But each and every time, he was just fortunate to barely survive. Is our boy acknowledging his plot armor? Seoul is now back in District Li of Choksun, residing in Zhangzhou's residence. He's lamenting his inadequate skills, as he's consistently barely managing to navigate tough situations or getting rescued by more powerful alchemists. Without real power, nothing will unfold according to his plans. He can't continue like this. He has already created 4 damnation pills using ingredients stolen from the dragon's medicine room. He contemplated the faces of the villains who came close to taking his life. To no longer be swayed by forces greater than himself, he must become stronger. This time, he's aiming to break through the realm of the law of spirit energy. He's uncertain when Elder Wang Tao will arrive. By now, that man must have realized his disciple is dead, so Seoul must prepare himself for a potential attack. He reassured Lady Ju that their family is not a burden, and that he's doing this to repay them for saving him in the past. He won't be going far to cultivate, so he'll be able to return if anything happens. Leaving the courtyard, the young lady couldn't help but see him as a genuinely warm-hearted person. She sincerely hopes that everything works out for him in the end. Mortal GF and Immortal BF. I'm down for that ship. Seoul made his way to his cultivation spot on his trusty flying sword. He landed on a mountainside with a concealed massive cavern. You can still see the Ju residence from this distance, so this point should suffice. Even if hostile alchemists come, he should be able to deal with them from here. Thus, he ventured deep into the treacherous depths of the cavern. Though he's rarely had to use it, the entreaty shield has been damaged and needs reinforcement. The entreaty has also been destroyed, requiring a replacement Dharma tool. Thanks to Senior Guemo, he's gathered sufficient materials to crack a stronger Dharma tool. He only needed to take the fiend's Niden from its Tau spirit and any other parts of the tortoise carcass. Utilizing his superior Dharma tool forging skills, he worked on the blades and shields simultaneously. He can now complete the rest of this work using his chi, but it will take time, so he'll leave it as is until it's finished. With his tools addressed, there is only one task left. He retrieved the 4 glimmering damnation pills from their box. These pills would serve as the catalyst for his strength enhancement. Adopting a meditative stance, he initiated the process. The potent energy from the pills enveloped him. He already senses the power of one of these damnation pills. To maximize efficiency, he must fully assimilate it. And so, his cultivation and pill absorption commenced within the cave. Days and nights passed until he mastered the heavenly birth. He finally restored his strength to the level he possessed in the forest of beasts. Moreover, he hadn't even fully utilized the energy from the damnation pill. Much of it remained. His masters were correct that the attainment he achieved could be reversed easily. Turning up the absorption, he began assimilating the rest of the damnation pill all at once. He intended to utilize this treasure to breach the unyielding gates of spirit energy. Within Seoul's body, the pill's efficacy manifested as images of himself. Countless avatars materialized from the pill's potency. Internally, he raised his hand and took charge of his army of avatars. With a resolute command, he directed his avatars to assault the gates. The avatars moved with the unified objective of unlocking the unyielding gates of spirit energy. Despite the pill's effects, Seoul sensed the difficulty of the task. After strenuous attempts, he realized the massive door hadn't budged. His masters had surely told him that something specific was required to break through the gates of spirit energy. While racking his brain to recall what that was, he also remembered the fourth master's playful punch and banter. He recollected Jangen's advice that breaking this gate required more than just amassing spiritual energy. It demanded even distribution. He also recalled the kindness and support of his first master. As well as Jangen's wit, his masters had instilled in him that an alchemist must first find inner peace, focusing on self-examination before all else. He knew all 5 of his esteemed masters believed in his potential. These thoughts brought a genuine smile to his face. If his masters were present, they would undoubtedly scold him for such an oversight. He had the intelligence to memorize the chant of black ice, yet he had forgotten something so crucial. He needed to alter the energy utilization of the damnation pill. He began by infusing more sharpness using metal energy. He condensed his power using water energy, then expanded that power using wood energy, further diffusing it using fire energy, and ultimately harmonizing and connecting all these forces using earth energy. So he can bend every element. He's literally just the avatar at this point. The gate of spirit energy was heavy and unyielding, so he focused on the sharpness of metal and the condensation capability of water. With this method, his avatars began to merge into one. The avatar formed by the pill's potency now bore even more of a striking resemblance to him. With a single push of both hands, the sturdy gate began to crumble. With another forceful shove, light from within began to emanate. Eventually, the barrier that had held him back was completely shattered. A surge of energy coursed through him. Opening his eyes after an arduous journey, he had finally achieved it. He had broken through the gates of spirit energy. Somewhere unknown, a man is feeling frustrated because no one knows where Don Judyong went. His disciple informed him that after disappearing at the Numyong prefecture, it's highly likely that he died. This man is an elder of the Iron Sphere Sect, Wang Tail. He asked his disciple what task Jubyong was assigned. This 6th disciple of his, Zheng Dongbu, gave him a complete rundown of their dealings with the mortal Zhu family. He also notified his master of the existence of another guest in the mansion, highly likely to be an alchemist. The disciple they sent to do the job was still in the middle class of heavenly birth, so Zheng Dongbu wants to personally intervene. But his master knows that they can't gauge the skills of his assailant. Jubyong died because of his master's affairs. It's only right for the elder himself to take care of this. Oh snap, boss fight incoming. Wang Tio will personally deal with the man who interrupted his so-called ceremony. The weather is outstanding at the Zhongzhou mansion in the Li district, a residence formerly gifted to Seoul. All this time, his Dharma tools did not match his skills. But it's a different story now that he's risen to new heights. He has mastered the law of spirit energy and effectively increased his lifespan by 500 years. But he still must practice diligently to pass on the vitality of yin and yang as soon as possible. The craftsmanship of river thirst, string craftsmanship, and destruction sword arts must not be neglected either. In the middle of the day, Seoul felt something approaching his residence. He went out to check who it was that he felt. He stood his ground and firmly asked what the arriving party wanted. Wang Tail measured him up as a mere middle-class, heavenly birth alchemist, thinking that his disciple must have been neglectful to lose a soul. Easily identified that the man hovering above him is Elder Wang of the Iron Sphere Sect. Since he knew the elder's identity, the introduction was unnecessary. Demanding the life of Wang Tail's disciple was the next step. As a senior, the elder conceded a few things, asking Seoul to equip his Dharma tools right away. He promptly complied and took out his newly reinforced arsenal. Seeing that Seoul's Dharma tools are high quality, the elder wanted to loot and use them after killing him. The disciple quietly praised his master for not holding back against a weak alchemist. This spirit barrier should stop all attacks. But Seoul knows that this elder is still not taking him seriously. This man is just too arrogantly generous. He initiated the first attack by launching 5 magical balls. Wang Tail mocked this attack as mere tricks, only trivial things and a poor attempt at deception. The elder thought that the real attacks must be amidst these tricks. And he was correct. Within the simple magic balls, one ball stood out with its malicious energy. The single ball exploded into dark smoke, as expected by the elder, further solidifying his disbelief that his disciple was killed by Seoul. Smiling confidently, Seoul could say the same thing about the elder. The clueless Wang Tail started to question what was truly happening as sinister smoke surrounded him. In just a second, his supposedly invincible spirit barrier melted and deteriorated. But it wasn't just his spirit barrier. The same happened to his own energy too. Seoul jumped behind the elder and implied that he now knows why Jubyong was so weak back then. The respected elder of the Iron Sphere Sect had been stabbed to death by Seoul's sword. The elder held on and took out a blade of his own, but his skin had turned completely purple. and his energy was depleting. He unleashed a formidable slash, only for his target to disappear. The image of Soul turned into nothing but empty smoke, and a mocking voice called out from the side. Soul was preparing his next attack. As expected of the giant shadow tortoise's smoke, even his senior Guango had a tough time against it. He was confident that he could deal with this powerful elder from here on out. A savage whirlwind started to surround the panicking Wang tail. In the middle of the storm, he was equally confused and frustrated that things had turned out this way for him. He struggled in the middle of the whirlwind until he finally took his last breath. And just for good measure, Soul ended the fight with a clean slash. Imagine talking trash only to end up being cut down. Rip Bozo. Just like that, the disciple on the side watched his master get slain by someone they initially thought was weak. This is a law of spirit energy alchemist, and more than that, someone who could slay the elder in a matter of seconds. This sixth disciple, Jung Dongbu, worked at full speed, thinking about what he must do next. As Soul was about to ask the disciple if he would like to follow his master, the guy was already calling him senior. He even bowed with full respect and fear. He pleaded to be spared and said that although his level is low, he would do anything to survive. He offered to provide Soul with information about the Iron Sphere sect. Soul could use someone with this level of desperation. He agreed to take in the pathetic sixth disciple of Elder Wang Tail, but he had other plans if he was going to let this guy live. He needed an assurance that he would have control over this guy's life. So, he handed Dongbu a familiar sinister pill. The aura of death surrounding it should be enough to instill doubt. Soul explained that this is a medicine that would prevent any tricks. Only he could make the antidote, and he would give it to the guy every half year. Dongbu could either swallow the pill or die right away. He knew that with Soul's skills, it would be faster to kill him with bare hands than through poison. Soul watched the poor guy take the pill and remembered his time with the ancient dragon. Of course, this pill wasn't as toxic as the treacherous fifth poison. The disciple immediately felt his energy being absorbed from the inside. Soul had heard that Elder Wang Tail had killed dozens of alchemists to loot their Dharma tools. So he took a sealed gourd from the elder's person and played with its seal. The disciple was a second late in warning him about its toxic contents. Soul was enveloped by a noxious green gas launched directly into his system. It seemed that this Dharma tool was called the rescue bottle, and it required a specific opening method. Dongbu was regaining his arrogance as he watched Soul carelessly open the poison, but it also struck him that this guy was the only one who could make the antidote for the poison in his system. He loudly protested that Soul must not die just yet. After confirming what this tool was, Soul expressed his disappointment that the poison was such a low-level one for him. He also mistakenly assumed that Dongbu's scream of how he shouldn't die was a sign of loyalty. So, he ordered the guy to follow him to his residence. Dongbu also received the task of finding out how to properly open the rescue bottle. The attendant of the Jew mansion sits idly in the courtyard, disappointed that a year has already passed since something interesting happened in this place. Meanwhile, Soul is examining an amulet in his residence. He successfully crafted this low-class amulet with the guidance and assistance of his new poison slave, Dongbu. Having completed the upgrade of his Dharma tools, it might be time to head out for the Iron Sphere sect. However, people in the sect might be a little suspicious since Elder Wang Tail has not yet returned. To remedy this, Soul will disguise himself as a 7th stage Dan development alchemist. He concentrates and swiftly retracts his power to hide his true level. In just a few seconds, he now appears to be at the 7th stage of Dan development. This is the same trick that caused the powerful elder to lower his guard and lose his life. With his disguise in place, he is ready to set off. He is excited to see how much wealth the elder has accumulated over the years. Welcome to the sturdy and stalwart grounds of the Iron Sphere sect. The elder in charge of educating new disciples introduces himself to the crowd. Everyone here, including the disguised Soul, has been acknowledged. However, there's a significant caveat. As long as they are in this sect, the time for play and comfort is over. They will become the lowest of the low on the ladder and will be tasked with all the tedious chores. They'll have to serve their seniors, senior masters, and senior brothers. They will do everything in exchange for a small portion of spirit stones and will be responsible for themselves from now on. So, they'll basically live the life of a normal citizen. Got it? Everyone is then instructed to move forward to be assigned their tasks. One disciple approaches Soul and addresses him by name. It seems Dongbu pulled some strings to get him assigned wherever he wants, which happens to be the place where they are growing sacred herbs. The disciple warns him that this cultivator task is quite difficult and the master there is picky. However, he doesn't mind at all. The disciple guarantees him the job in exchange for a good word to their senior brother Dongbu. Thus, he is escorted to the place where the sect cultivates sacred herbs. He notices that they are artificially increasing the age of the herbs here. Inside the residence, he only senses the presence of a single person. He can already tell that this job is a perfect fit for him. He slowly opens the door and offers a respectful greeting. Inside is the master of the cultivation area, MOK YEOM. He introduces himself as the new recruit assigned to the job, receiving a nonchalant response. When he inquires about his task, the elder simply tells him to take it easy. "Oh man, this would be the job for me." However, the old man looks at him for a moment and seems to have a different thought. He starts to worry that this elder might have seen through his concealment technique. The old man shifts to a more serious expression, and Soul starts sweating nervously. If this guy really sees through him, his plans could be thrown into chaos. But MOK YEOM only wants to express that he looks good and that he's more handsome than the sect leader. Hold up, old man MOK YEOM is kind of sus. This also prompts the elder to have a favorable impression of him, even offering to read his fortune, which he declines. "I won't let this old man read my palm too." To test him out, he will have to memorize a series of books in 3 days before receiving his task on the 4th day. He can use any vacant lodging in the back. And there are 2 other seniors in this place. That should be enough work for the elder today, so he goes ahead and takes a nap. Night falls and Soul has finally settled into his new residence for a while. He knows how to make Dan pills, but he's just starting to learn how to grow their ingredients. He quickly memorizes the book so he can move on to his next mission. He quickly scans the area to see if anyone is nearby. After confirming that he's alone, he bursts into action with godlike speed. In midair, he retrieves something from his pouch. It's a familiar, luxurious garment from someone mentioned a few chapters ago. It's Wang Tail's entire drip. Not only that, Soul also has his face. Bar for bar, he copied the dead man's whole flow. Dongbu is already anticipating his arrival at the sect's entrance. Soul promptly arrives with his perfect cosplay set. He praises Dongbu for making it easier for him to blend in. Soul is already thinking about all the treasures he can take from this sect, but it seems there's one more problem they must deal with. When Dongbu returns to the sect, the leader wonders where his master is. So now, the sect leader has personally requested a face-to-face meeting. Late at night, Soul must comply and meet with the powerful sect leader of one of the nation's largest factions. Oh snap, psychological warfare with the big dog incoming. He greets respectfully as soon as the doors open. The Iron Sphere sect leader, Wu Hyoji, appears to be a cunning and clever man. Soul is welcomed with the elder's favorite nectar liquor. The leader expresses his concern for Soul's unexplained absence for a few days. He then asks what the leader wants to know. The elder's disappearance before the so-called event has put the leader on high alert. This event should concern only the upper echelons, and Soul tries to portray himself similarly to the arrogant Wang Tail. After listening to Soul, it's clear that the leader has significantly backed down and relaxed. The crucial thing is that Soul has returned in time. While the elder was absent, preparations were slow, which is why the master opened the doors for new disciples. Soul dismisses the idea, stating he has no interest in newly hatched chicks. Based on the leader's words, most of the new disciples would end up dead, while some would emerge as an emoji, just like Wang Tail himself. The wording of that sentence leads Soul to focus on what that event truly is. Right now, he's certain that this sect is preparing for an incoming war. They're about to start Call of Duty, alchemist warfare. It seems like this war will be different from the last one. Most of the forces have come to their side, regardless of political standing. The head and elders of the Su family also went ahead and trapped themselves to death. It was a turning point. After this war, the sect will take over the family's spirit stone mine. The sadistic sect leader continued to talk on and on about the slaughter of the Su family, a family that Soul is acquainted with. The leader's concerns have grown too much after not seeing his trusted elder, so Soul had to apologize for this again. He excused himself to stop by the sacred flower treasury. He now knows that a blood purge will soon come to this nation. The justice and evil factions are finally going to clash, and he's conflicted about the people he's met in this country. In the end, he convinced himself that this war had nothing to do with him. He just needs to loot Wang Tail's wealth and disappear. He finally arrived in front of the treasury only accessible to elders and those above. The border security reflects the value of the treasures inside. The guards at the entrance respectfully greeted him. He can simply walk through the gates without a fuss and with assistance. Deep inside the structure is a massive sealed gate with 4 old men serving as guardians. One of them initiated the opening ceremony with the activation of his elemental energy. The other 3 followed with their own distinct attributes. It seems like you would need 4 Law of Spirit Energy alchemists just to open this treasury. This just served as another reason to be excited about what's stored inside. The door then slowly opened, revealing a bright light. One of the alchemists instructed him to follow the exact steps he would take. They quietly made their way deep inside the magical treasury. This area should only be about 2 rooms wide, but they created a massive subspace inside. He was led to another door that should specifically belong to Wang Tao. This is where the trouble starts. He doesn't know how to open this door. Even Dongwu doesn't know about this one. As he was shaking in his boots, the attending alchemist started to grow suspicious. He reckoned that the key must be the emergency bottle. If he fumbles at this stage, he'll have to fight through 4 Law of Spirit Energy alchemists and a whole sect. He thought he might as well try the emergency bottle method that Dongwu figured out. He held his breath as he attempted to open the door. A sigh of relief escaped from him after seeing the seal become undone. He was now free to roam and plunder Wang Tao's lifelong treasures. After completely robbing their vaults, he was even respectfully greeted as he walked out. Imagine robbing a bank and the guards help you carry the bags of cash to your getaway car. He flew away as fast as he could. With this, Wang Tao will disappear from the world. He just hopes that he can see the sect leader's expression when he finds out. The cultivation area of the sect is at the foot of Mount Junhua. Since the lord of the area likes him, Soul decides to stay here for a while. He can polish all his skills and abilities peacefully. Furthermore, ordinary disciples are prohibited from entering this place. But that's until a punk wearing a fancy armor set scolded him for slacking off. The moment you try to chill, some bozo always comes to bother you. He had just finished work, so he's all good to chill. And he doesn't know who this guy is. This young man arrogantly referred to himself as the great disciple of the Great Iron Sphere. He immediately recognized that this was Senior Brother Wu, and a humble apology settled the situation. But this guy shouldn't even be here in the first place. This cultivation area is prohibited to ordinary disciples, after all. Clearly embarrassed, young Master Wu insisted that he could enter any place in this sect. This young man is the son of the sect leader, and he seems to be planning something by coming here. This boy is a Nepo baby. That plan became apparent as the kid asked where the junior sister MOK was. Soul has been working here for half a month, but he still hasn't seen this senior sister of his. Young Master Wu took pity on him for not having seen the charm of the young woman. Young Master Wu insisted that he wouldn't be satisfied with the simple life here after seeing the lady's face. He just couldn't believe that his lady was as pretty as the young man claimed. This MOK YEOM is widely regarded as the prettiest woman in the Iron Sphere sect. It's a mystery that the same lord of this cultivation area had a daughter as pretty as her. Young Master Wu even slipped that he shouldn't even be here to catch a glimpse of her. And so, he commissioned Soul to keep this visit a secret in exchange for a great position in the sect. However, a firm and authoritative voice of a woman was already yelling for the young master. MOK YEOM has already told him to stop sneaking into this area again. I honestly don't see the hype, but I respect young Master Wu's taste. She threatened to go to the sect leader and report him. The desperate young Master Wu even used Soul as a scapegoat to stop her. This is also the first time that the 2 disciples of the cultivation area are meeting. They greeted each other respectfully. The young master wouldn't mind using Soul again as a reason to come to this mountain over and over, but he'll have to leave now, as ordered by MOK YEOM. The young man is genuinely smitten by the young woman. Even Soul can see how head over heels that brat is. Now that they are the only 2 remaining in this spot, they can talk freely. Knowing that her father must have given Soul some books, she offered to help him with his studies. He assessed that she's a sensible person unlike her father, but he pities the young Wu Qiong for falling for someone hard to win over. Before he could go back to his residence, she sternly ordered him to wait. The lady asked him what his true deal is. This question naturally confused him. MOK YEOM then gravely asked him how he managed to hide his ability. Wait, she's pretty, kind, and strong enough to see through our boy? That might be a waifu material. This young woman saw through his technique effortlessly. Initially, he believed she was merely at the heavenly birth stage, but she's an enlightened yin and yang alchemist, a step above him. He attempted to deny the accusations, but she pressed on. Her interrogation continued, probing into why he was sneaking into this place disguised as a novice in Dan development. Reluctantly, he confessed that his purpose was to learn how to cultivate sacred herbs in this energetically rich and tranquil environment. The words that followed were pivotal, potentially determining whether MOK YEOM would spare his life or not. He argued that death was too severe, especially if she herself was concealing her strength. Her explanation was that she was hiding her power to prevent unnecessary conflicts. Upon reflection, he realized this applied to him as well. His senior sister acknowledged his point, allowing him to stay, but under the condition that he set up his rune next to hers. That's a mission failed successfully. If she spotted anything even remotely suspicious, she would tear him apart and feed him to the fiends. With this agreement, Sewell finally breathed a sigh of relief. He comprehended that beneath the threats, this young lady was simply safeguarding her loved ones. Beneath her exterior, she was warm-hearted. Thus, he relocated to a house adjacent to his senior sister's. He examined the wealth of techniques he had pilfered from the treasury. Moreover, Wang Tail's abundance of spirit stones that came from bloodshed and access to a collection of untitled, yet superior-level visions are now his property. Amidst this stack of books, one technique caught his eye. Focusing his energy inward, a perfect duplicate of himself manifested before him. Gazing at the clone in astonishment, he marveled at how he had created it using a small amount of spiritual energy. The book noted that even enlightened yin and yang alchemists wouldn't discern the trick. The drawback was that controlling the clone required conscious effort, leaving room for mistakes and exposure. Yet, he had already mastered the chant of black ice for splitting consciousness. Guided by this, he attempted to manipulate the clone. With the optimized chant of black ice, this technique suited him perfectly. Henceforth, he named the technique alter ego. Late into the night, he diligently meditated in his room. Occasionally, a surge of energy passes through him fleetingly. His senior sister next door remained vigilant, monitoring him with her chi. Although he aspired to practice the second half of the destruction sword art forms, the current situation hindered him. He decided to engage MOK YEOM in conversation. She opened the door, dressed in her flowing silk gown, prepared for bedtime. The transformation from her aura of death to now was astounding. It's obvious why she was known as the Sect's beauty. Seeking her consent to practice, he expressed concern that his swordsmanship practice might disturb her. The young lady was curious about the swordsmanship of this young man. Ao paused. What kind of swords are we talking about here? He can't go into details, but he still wanted to give her a heads up and ask for permission. She granted permission with a caveat: she would oversee his practice due to lingering distrust. This condition was non-negotiable for the stubborn lady. She even joked that his sword arts might be so basic that they could be copied with a mere glance. Although reluctant to reveal this technique, he realized she wouldn't be able to practice it without the chant of black ice. Thus, he accepted her terms. After warning her about the strength of his technique to prevent accidents, they headed to the mountains. Her curiosity centered around his true capabilities. With precise control, 2 swords floated beside him. Executing the first form of destruction sword arts, the flying swallow energy strike, he transitioned seamlessly to the second form, watercross counterattack. The swords slashed a nearby tree, leaving deep gashes in its bark. Next, he performed the yin and yang conjunction. The Dharma tools landed as he caught his breath. Sewell recognized that no technique within their sect matched this swordsmanship. Unfinished, he moved to the 5th form, Dark Countercurrent. The swords ascended and then descended like meteoric blades. Now, it was time for the second half of the arts. The 7th form, the Touch of Mist, enveloped the blades in a faint, misty glow. The potency and aura of these Dharma tools were palpable. The 2 swords elegantly twisted around a tree, leaving it brutally shattered. Though demanding on spiritual energy, its power was unmatched. Observing his techniques, MOK YEOM felt a twinge of envy. Possessing ample spiritual energy, she lacked a fitting technique. She praised his impressive display. Understanding his dedication to mastering the technique, they returned to their residences. A month passed, and MOK YEOM grew impatient with Sewell's absence from practice. Attempting to replicate his movements yielded no progress. Suddenly, the adjacent house's door opened. She eagerly inquired if he would finally practice, only to learn he would train differently this time. Despite this, she still wanted to watch. Realizing he would need her help, he proposed a test of his clone's effectiveness against her discernment. She promptly identified his real body among the clones time and time again in multiple tries. This technique didn't interest her. She preferred watching his sword arts. However, Sewell remained determined to refine his alter ego technique until it could deceive her. He embarked on closed-door research, returning with 3 flawless copies. Even then, MOK YEOM confidently pinpointed his real body. She proposed a bet. If she found the genuine Sewell, she would win. And her reward for being correct? To learn his remarkable swordsmanship technique. No way she's getting the 5th Master's legacy. He immediately disagreed with the bet. She even tried to haggle it down to just 1 form. But it's a technique that must be combined with another. Desperate, she would settle for any other offensive techniques. If he wins the bet, she'll agree to any favor. She really wants an attacking skill, so she's willing to do absolutely anything. He knows he shouldn't go around spreading his master's legacies, but since they have developed mutual trust, the bet is on. He promptly cloned himself into 3. If she fails to guess even 1 out of 10 tries, then he will have won. He's so confident in his deception this time. However, as always, MOK YEOM is just too good at discerning fake from real. It's so simple to her that it sends him into a downward spiral. Since she won the bet, it's time for payment. As promised, he handed her a technique from a book that came from Wong Tail's collection. She's open to the idea of another round of betting once he can make 4 clones. She'll even give him 30 chances. The technique she won is the spiral bomb. It condenses spirit energy to the extreme. The 5 elements can even be incorporated for even more destructive power. So, it's basically raw Sengon from Naruto. The competitive soul would like to try the bet again, this time putting 2 wishes on the line. But his confidence will be shattered once more. 2 months later, every one of his alter egos would be seen through. He was forced to hand over another skill called the Inner Binding Seal to MOK YEOM. He's certain that she's hiding something, but he has no clue what it is. Just like that, half a year has passed peacefully without fuss. The two have grown significantly closer to each other. Their late-night getaways have become quite commonplace to the point where Soul almost loses everything he has. While they were working, a Sect disciple came running onto the scene as fast as he could. He came to deliver a transfer order for disciple Wound Soul. She immediately tried to protest this mandate. This transfer is happening because of the Great War unfolding in the nation. The evil faction is closer to victory than ever before. She and her father have been exempted from the war, but Soul is not exempt even though he's listed as a done development disciple. The messenger assured them that Soul won't be sent to the danger zones. He will only be deployed under the siege group to sweep over the remnants of the Su family. The exhausted stragglers can hardly pose any threat to their forces. Soul is deliberating whether he should go, but this is the So family, the family that gave him the opportunity to go to the Lone Spirit land. He'll answer the call to action. The messenger praised his vigor and passion as a disciple of the Sect, and he prepared right away. MOK YEOM is extremely reluctant to see him go, but he reassured her that he'll be back swiftly. In the Choksun Mountains, the remnants of the Su family are fleeing for their survival. The siblings, along with another member, are the family's only hope. They need to survive until they can reach the arrangement prepared in case of their family's annihilation. Their other brother named Chun can't handle the fatigue anymore. They've been running through a dense forest for half a day, and their stamina is giving out. The bloodline of their proud family has almost been extinguished overnight. The Tiger Clan and the 3 Ministry Martial Arts family of the Justice Sects caught them by surprise with their sudden betrayal. Not far from their resting spot, there was an explosion of spirit energy. The criminal bearded alchemist from the Spirit Land is relentlessly hunting them. This scum is named Elder Biam. The criminal is amused, hunting down helpless prey. So we tried to talk to the bearded man about showing them mercy, but the criminal only laughed at his proposal and insulted him for even bringing it up. He then proceeded to offer a reward if the criminal just pretends not to see them. The word rewards piqued the bearded man's attention. With their whole family annihilated, they wouldn't need the spirit stones for reconstruction, so he'll hand them over. Elder Biam's counteroffer is killing them and completely ending their bloodline. Sui instructed his brother and sister not to interfere. With his Dharma tools equipped, he plans to fight it out. The bearded man casually unleashed a flaming cane slash. It crashed into the woods with an explosion. A single strike rendered Sui useless. Even his siblings got caught in the blast radius. But he still wants to propose something before he dies. Not wanting to hear any more, Biam releases Dharma tool. Sui doesn't care if he dies, but he'll give the bearded man the location of their treasures in exchange for his siblings' lives. The criminal agreed just in time. He'll listen to this last wish for the location. The helpless Sui wants Biam to come closer so he can tell him. Skeptical, Biam wants him to write it out, but with his spiritual energy rapidly being exhausted, he doesn't have enough time. He also threw his pouch away for assurance. Biam went ahead and came closer to hear the treasure location. Sui's look of defeat turned into a look of malice. He released a dark and malevolent smoke from his mouth. It enveloped Biam, paralyzing his body and scattering his spiritual energy. The criminal fell victim to his own greed. He won't let them get away, even if he must call for help. From afar, a few young alchemists spotted Biam's signal beam. This group that's just looking for a spot to camp included Soul. He decided to leave his alter ego at the camp while he slipped into the action. You can only hope that Sui is alright. Su Jijin took over their retreat after her brother passed out. Elder Biam has recovered and is right on their tail, angrier than ever. He screamed that if they had abandoned their big brother, they would have had a higher possibility of escaping. They ran and ran until there was no place left to run. They'd resigned to their fate and felt relieved that since Sui was paralyzed too, he wouldn't feel the pain of death. No one would witness their deaths, but she would curse this villain until her last breath. Yeom couldn't care less as he sent his wooden scythe downwards. He mocked them, saying that after death, they would just have to watch him live a good and eternal life. The criminal's celebration was cut short as his Dharma tool was crushed midair. It was interrupted by a middle-aged man holding a familiar-looking blade. Yeom assessed that the stranger was a law of spirit energy alchemist. This man had appeared out of nowhere, and he looked an awful lot like Wang Tail. Beard tried to throw out the names of big sects and families, insisting that this was a matter between factions. But the man did not pay him any attention. He gave the siblings some wound pills to help them recover from their injuries and restore their spiritual energy. So Jijin was skeptical at first, but they had no choice, so she fed the pill to her brother. Yeom asked the stranger if he was from Choksan, but he introduced himself as someone from the Iron Sphere sect. This only confused Yeom further. They should be collaborating instead, but the stranger was not helping the siblings. He was just getting in the way of the hateful criminal due to their history. Yeom was now utterly lost in confusion. All he could see was a stranger wielding 5 Dharma tools against him. He decided to focus on defending with his spirit barrier. He just needed to wait for support, but this thin layer of defense wouldn't suffice. A blue beam of light forcefully crashed against his barrier, eventually shattering a hole in his defense. Now that his spirit barrier was breached, beams of light and flying blades came rushing at him. He wouldn't give in without a fight, so he launched his wooden scythe again. This man had truly appeared out of nowhere to foil the villain's plans. The barrier completely shattered, and the blade lunged into Yeom's body. He was driven to the ground, defeated within an inch of his life. As he raised his head for a final look, the stranger told him not to extort juniors anymore. Those words triggered memories from not too long ago, his journey through the lone spirit land and meeting the formidable junior, and his eventual retreat against Guango. The identity of the stranger finally made sense. Soul and Wang Tail's disguise had used up quite a lot of spirit stones for this fight. He also remembered that the remnants of the So family were here, so Jijin remained on high alert after hearing that the man was with the Iron Sphere sect. But the man knew her by name, and when the illusion was undone, she saw Soul's reassuring face. She had not expected him to be here at all. They had no time to catch up and were in dire need to flee from this site first. Hopping on their flying swords, they headed out to retreat. The recovery pill revitalized Su Jijin and stabilized her brother. She hadn't known that Soul was this powerful. He halted their advance for a moment after sensing something. 5 experts in the law of spirit energy were coming for them, maybe even more. This information sent a shiver down her spine. This many strong enemies were hopeless for them. There could be upwards of 10 experts coming their way. She assured him that after he helped them out as best as he could, they wouldn't blame Soul if he chose to abandon them. But if he helped them until the end, she swore to repay him even after death. This was quite a heavy request, but Soul chose to do his best. They continued their flight to meet their pursuers. He set a rule that if his life was in danger, he would flee. Although he had some ties to the Su family, it didn't warrant sacrificing his life. It didn't take long for the situation to take a turn for the worse. They were already surrounded from every angle. While hovering in midair, he asked the covered pursuers to reveal themselves. As soon as he said that, formidable experts around them blocked their retreat. Each one of these individuals held an elder role or higher. They got the whole retirement community in here. Soul is in a pinch once again. The one leading the pack found his Uncle Yeom's body on their way here. Jijin is using his flying sword. However, even if the remnants of the Su family worked together, they would not have stood a chance. He asked Soul if he did it to help the Su family of Choksan. He confirmed the truth in that, but he also holds a personal grudge against the guy. The leader can see that as the case, based on his uncle's ambition, but no one had dared to act on these grudges. Due to the personal vendetta, the leader won't put the blame solely on Soul. However, the honor of the fallen family needs restoration. An elder of the family has died, and the patriarch cannot simply let it go. Soul jumped out of his flying sword and wielded every Dharma tool in his arsenal. On one side, he had an elder with a spiked flail and a sharp blade. On the other, a fiery orb and a wooden staff. Soul knows that drawing out the fight with his depleted spirit energy would only lead to his demise. He feels sorry for the Su family, but he needs to escape from here. He plans to focus on defense and then flee in the opposite direction. The coordinated charge of the elders left no openings to exploit. He was forced to defend as hard as he could. Reinforcing his tools with giant shadowed tortoise shells is paying off now. Blocking this, many formidable alchemists used to be unthinkable. However, the fact that the leading alchemist still hasn't moved an inch is making him nervous. Moreover, the elder wielding a flail is becoming especially annoying. Rather than being chased by that thing, he should subdue it and run away. Sol summoned his Dharma tool balls and launched 3 of them to optimal spots before activating their flashing lights. He capped off with some lesser smoke bombs to further lower visibility. The elders are now in the dark about his next move. He summoned 4 identical alter egos, each one targeting a different person. This has put the elders in a bind, especially the one carrying the flail. Sol dashed at full speed to neutralize the old man, preparing to unleash a sweltering wave of anxiety at point-blank range. However, it was interrupted by a harmonious flow of water. He noticed that it was coming from behind him. The peaceful flow quickly transformed into a raging surge of unstoppable water. From midair, this elemental attack pinned him down to the ground. He was then forced to stay down there with a trident aimed at his neck. The leader read his moves like an open book. Big dog, white-haired Poseidon did not come out here to play. He asked the man how he was found out, and the leader simply put himself in Sol's shoes. If he were in that situation, he would have prioritized the massive threat of the flail as well. Sol was utterly defeated this time around. His confidence in escaping was more pathetic than anything. Gathering water spirit energy around the trident, the leader intended to end everything now. However, he suddenly felt the arrival of someone new. Something flew through the air at breakneck speed, donning the mask of a beast. The leader was forced to parry the incoming rush. From a fair distance away, we see the familiar white hair of a senior. It seems even the leader knows who this guy is, interrupting them. It was none other than Gwengo Duin, riding on top of a white crane. He came to the rescue of the children of the Su family and the guy lying on the ground. It's evident that he has just had a massive breakthrough. Having lived in the Lone Spirit land for 40 years, things have turned out quite well for him. He even recommended the elders to do the same for 100 years. The senior is certain that with him, the guy behind the leader, and the white crane, it wouldn't be enough to put up a bloody fight. He asked the leader if they would risk their lives for the sake of children from a fallen family. After taking a moment to think about it, the leader gave up on the Sioux remnants. However, he still wants to take care of the man who took the life of his uncle. To this, Wango couldn't help but laugh. Even his pet white crane shared a hearty chuckle. He insisted that since he liked the guy, they could just use force if words weren't an option. This put the leader in a tough spot, but in the end, he still chose the rational decision of letting the matter go. He's really good at assessing situations. Why can't all villains be this smart and rational, bro? And so, the leader and his elders left the scene without a fuss. Wango immediately scolded Sol for hiding his face in front of his senior. And thus, the Lone Spirit Land Junior and Senior duo were reunited once again.